joining us for this webinar. And I will request you to please introduce yourself um, as a chapter officer also, and your as your personal professional profile also. And please, over to you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Uh, Thank you, Paramirji, and a warm welcome and good morning to everyone on the call. And meeting. I have kind of met and interacted with all of you. So my name is Pradyumn, and I manage the SaaS cloud security, privacy, compliance, and other areas for my organization in the Asia region. And I represent Oracle professionally, though here I'm in my capacity as a CISSP member and member of this chapter. So thanks for this time opportunity, and let's get started. So today's session, I'll keep it kind of slightly informal, set the context, and then we can proceed and we can have follow-up sessions subsequently also on the areas that we discuss. So uh, the the start point is around how we define security in cloud and specifically the SaaS area. So with that, I'll be leveraging some of the content of public content from Oracle, but while the technology usage may be of Oracle, but the guiding principles are largely which apply to SaaS in general. So they are, I mean, those guiding principles are not specific to a cloud service provider, but largely generic in nature. So that will set the context, and we can have follow-up presentations and sessions on these areas. So allow me to share my screen, and then we'll quickly get started. So I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. Thank you. So essentially, this is I'm kind of not leveraging the standard PPT mode, but actually referring to content which is available in the public domain, so that you can actually see what is there, and we'll go through few of those items in tune. So I'm referring to a blog which was written by David Cross, who was the CISO of Oracle Corporation. And so he had written a blog which was to essentially assimilate the guiding principles of SaaS cloud security. Now, before that, I just wanted to give a sneak peek into the architecture of how SaaS cloud typically works, and how those applications work. So the salient offerings from Oracle on SaaS are typically in the areas of ERP. And ERP has obviously many modules inside it, which includes financials, procure to pay, everything which an enterprise resource planning system would need. Besides that, there is the whole set of offerings for human capital management, supply chain, enterprise performance management, then things around CRM, marketing cloud. So there are multiple offerings which are available from Oracle, but this is the broad architecture of the Fusion SaaS cloud services. And there is some background noise. May I request anybody who's not on mute, may I request them to mute themselves? Thank you. As you see, this block diagram essentially talks from the of the infrastructure and the way the access is done in Oracle SaaS Cloud. So you see on the left side is the customer's user, right? So this user comes through their browser. Now almost all standard browsers are supported, and what our end user essentially needs is just a browser to make a connection via internet. And if they want, they can obviously leverage their VPN, or they can have a dedicated connectivity from their organization's cloud data center to Oracle's cloud data center. So endpoints could be terminated there to have a lease line between their premises to Oracle. That is also an option which is there. And most of the prevalent telcos in the region generally have their endpoints terminated in Oracle's data centers, which are available globally. Right. So we have 50 plus cloud data centers across data center regions, and each region can have multiple data centers. So practically cover, every part of the globe, in terms of usage. So ideally in India, for hypothetically, let's take the Indian context and let's talk about, say like a customer user. So user will come through a connection. There will be an IP allow list. So IP deny, IP allow is a option which customers can configure. They can provide the set of IP addresses from which the requests will be accepted or denied. So if a request originates from an IP address outside the allow list, it will by default be denied at the SaaS cloud, authentication tier itself. Now, once the user is authenticated, so one is the allow list, second is the username, password, and third factor could be, they could use a multi-factor authentication by using either their own IDPs, or they could leverage the default IDP which comes with Oracle. So, somebody who has, say, Microsoft or Azure AD. So the request, if it comes here, it will be pushed back to customer's own IDP, and over there the user will be authenticated and the access token will be passed back here to allow them access to the system. And if there is a second factor also configured, then that factor could also be put into place. For example, it could be a biometric, it could be a YubiKey, it could be a RSA token, etc. Those kind of things could be put in place. So any of the second factor could also be put in place to have a second rung of security besides the username, password, and of course the IP allow, deny list, etc. There are more things from the security side which I'll come to later. Now, as you see, it hits this area. If you see this box, it is where the customer's database, the realm so-called, has the configurations, the files, the metadata is all lying here. And there is a database which is accessing, of course, it is all in high availability with multiple availability zones and no single point of failure, to ensure that no single tier or a hardware or a middleware or a network failure should disrupt the usage. Now, this part coming here and all the data in transit from here to here is encrypted. The data at rest is also encrypted, as you see in this diagram, which is, at table space level, it is encrypted. AES 128-bit, and then subsequently it is further encrypted using the key, which is the key encryption key, to encrypt the table space level encryption further using a 256-bit encryption. So, it's like, so this diagram is, sorry, read this as 256-bit and not 128-bit. Okay, so it's 256-bit. So and these keys are stored in a specific HSM module, which will be outside in a separate pod. So data at rest, data in transit will be encrypted by default. And so here's the 256-bit encryption key. Now on the other realm is this Oracle DevSecOps user. Now this is the person who is actually managing the operations from Oracle side. So Oracle's cloud admin. Now, the cloud admin goes through something known as OCNA, which is, they don't have direct access. They go through OCNA, which is Oracle Cloud Network Access, which is a dedicated network connection using a specific VPN and a bastion to log into a system. And then, their password is in a escrow account, and their access is limited on the standard guiding principles that we are all aware of, which is about need to know, deny by default, etc. And that's where they get permission, and the access is limited to a certain time, right? And it gets so they have to apply for access after every 45 days to 60 days, depending on their role and privileges, and their area of operation would be restricted. For example, a firewall administrator can only access firewall. A database administrator can only access certain areas of the database, not everything. They can't sneak into the data, and everything what they do will be logged. That includes keystroke logging. So there are logs available for forensic purpose for any reason, subsequently, if required, by the provider or by the customer. So this is kind of plus, of course, there is this whole concept of database vault, which goes over and above the cloud network access. Now what happens is, as part of the database vault, in case customers want to use their own keys instead of Oracle's encryption keys, customers can bring that. Database vault also ensures that every activity which is to be performed by Oracle administrator on the database, if suppose customer raises a service request, do something on my database, the access will be monitored, logged, access will be restricted, uh, and the log files will be available for view internally by Oracle and by the customer if needed. So it's kind of also helps in compliance to certain regulations, for example, in the regulated industries. So this is the typical paradigm in which the access controls are restricted. So I kind of gave a very high level sneak peek into things. Obviously, it is more detailed, but uh, the point number 3 here is important, which is about application visibility and controls, which is role-based access control, data security profiles, and location-based access controls. So you get to see, depending on what customers admin configures a user's role as, they will get to see only that area of the application. I'll give you an example. Suppose it was a human capital management application. A typical standard HR, say analyst, will only see the employee's basic details. But the head of HR probably could see everybody's compensation and other things because they are at a higher level in the hierarchy, even if they use the same query or the application tool to access that data. The second thing is about location-based access control. So we spoke about the IP whitelisting or IP access controls. Location-based access control is about denying access depending on the location in which the request is originating from. I'll quote an example. Today, my organization is using, say, cloud services, and most of my employees are based in, say, India or in the US. Now, I would apply location-based access control so that the range of IP addresses which are assigned to India or to US, only the request coming originating from those IP addresses will be allowed, and deny others. Hypothetically, let's say a request originates from South America and a country from South America. Rather than applying, the whole range of IP addresses, we could simply give a region name, say, for example, South America, or a country name. So all the IP addresses allocated to that region are blocked or not permitted. So if a dummy request comes or a malicious request originates from that, and somebody may have stolen the credentials, the username, passwords, etc., the request still will be denied. And an alert goes to the admin, the customer's admin, to say, there was a malicious request which was denied. In fact, this kind of capability has also come into not just this application, but other applications, for example, with say Microsoft Hotmail. I mean, this happened to me personally day before, when I got all of a sudden on my phone, I got a pop-up which said, I think it was from Mexico. It said actually that there is a request, authentication request on your Hotmail account, which is originating from Mexico, allow or deny. Obviously, I press the button deny. So that also alludes to the another example of location-based access control, which is now being applied to most of the services which are based in cloud. So any questions so far? Okay. I hope my pace is okay. Or
Pace is
are you
good.
okay? Fine.
I
And
mean,
I hope
diagram which you're showing.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm saying the diagram which you're showing. It's the SaaS application, right, which we are offering to the clients, and the same is being the same setup is available in different regions across the globe, right?
Absolutely. You're right.
Okay. And the persons which you are shown in the diagram, they are from the Oracle team, which are
No, so
basically no. Okay.
there are two. So one is
Okay.
the persona on top left. It is the Oracle DevSecOps, and the persona at the left bottom is the customer
That's the
user.
customer. Got it.
So their access is different, and in fact, they don't go through. Say, for example, even if it is a Oracle employee, part of that team, they will not use Oracle's enterprise network. It will be a separate, dedicated connectivity which they will have. Right. But I mean, as I put forth earlier as a caveat is that be it Oracle, be it any other large SaaS provider, the guiding principles would largely remain the same. Right. And this is the URL. I can share the URL. So, you could kind of read this yourself too. It's in the public domain.
And sir, how do you protect that customer's data is not visible to the Oracle team?
Yeah. So that's where role-based access control, data. So it's a bit of a eye chart. Apologies for that. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Is this, so you see something like database vault?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now this gets applied to, kind of prevent, somebody from working. Now what we have is this persona. They don't have access to customers' data by default. Okay. Let me take a step back and probably delve into an area which is largely contractual between a cloud user and a cloud provider is the data processing agreement, where we say the cloud service provider will be the processor and the customer will be the data controller. So access to customer data is prohibited by default within the SaaS cloud services, largely by almost all SaaS providers. So what happens is, if this user tries to do a query into customers' data, they will not see anything. Because their request will be denied. Only a select set of users, operational people could actually do that. That too basis a written request which comes from the customer to correct something which customers themselves are unable to resolve subsequently. For example, somebody updated a general ledger for some reason and they really couldn't reverse it or something of that sort. Then they have to request through a written request, permission granted. That brings me to the fourth point here, and a great question, which is about this, which is about break glass control. Now, what happens is today, the keys, I mentioned about the keys. This is Oracle provided keys. Customers can bring in their own keys using this option of break glass. So with break glass, customers will supply their own keys. The key will be applied to the instance. Keys will be retained by the customer. If a request is done by the customer, fix this thing for me, which I'm not able to, a temporary access can be granted basis that request to the Oracle persona who would work. And for that, the keys have to be supplied by the customer. It is not a human driven process. It is like a machine driven automated process. So the keys will go into an escrow account and automatically get applied. When customer is applying the keys, prior to that, Oracle will officially originate a request to the customer, please apply the keys so that we can it gets decrypted and somebody can work. When that happens at customer's end, there is an option of a three-tiered approval process which can be applied, so that arbitrarily nobody from customer's end should be pushing the keys without rhyme or reason. So there is governance available at customer's end. Customer will provide, and while that action is happening, it is time bound. Typically in lots of 24 hours, maximum to 96 hours. And while that action is happening, there is continuous logging happening, and customer has full visibility into the actions which are being done by the specific administrator of database who is working from our end. Right? And at any point in time, customer can revoke the keys, which will obviously stop access to anything on the system from our end. The flip side is, if the customer loses the key, they lose their data. That's it. I mean, nobody can recover their data because it's encrypted by them and retained by them.
One last question, sir. Like in case
Yeah, please.
there is a data breach, who is actually liable? Like suppose something, some data is lost for my organization from Oracle Cloud, and it happened because of Oracle team, well, just hypothetically. So who will be ultimately liable for that? Like us or the Oracle team?
When you say us, means the customer, or you're representing an organization?
The customer, the customer, the customer.
Data breach. Okay, a separate topic in itself. I can talk on that. See, what happens is there are forensics available in terms of how would the breach happen. Now, breaches can happen. I mean, there's no perfect system in the world. So far, there is a well-defined process around data breach, and that is covered under NDA with the customer, and that is covered by a specific high-level team. Probably outside the scope of this conversation, we can have it separately, because breach incident handling is a full activity in itself. Sorry, I'm kind of showing the screen, so I missed. Sorry, who was kind of asking the question? Sorry, so that I take a note and you can.
Sir, I'm Akshay. I'm Akshay Mishra.
Akshay, okay, yeah, Akshay.
Yeah.
So
Thanks.
Yeah, we can, because actually I have. It's a topic in itself. We can have a hour-long conversation on that too. Okay, but yes, liability is again goes into the legal realm a bit, depending on the regulations, depending on the geography in which it was, depending on the outcome of the forensics, and then things around breach notifications. So different regulators have different clauses for breach notifications. So if there is a breach, how does it get notified to the customer? So as part of our data processing agreement, there is a clause which says, and the typical template which is followed as a thumb rule is the GDPR. So GDPR mandates within 72 hours, customers have to be notified. In our case, the standard notification time is proactively, and that is proactively. Customers may not even come to know of a breach incident, but so the Oracle will notify the customers within 24 hours. So that's there, and then of course there are things which are because that is a conversation which happens directly between the customer and others. Because in public cloud, the first assessment is to prevent the attack, and then of course assess the damage, if any, and then accordingly take the right action. So there are teams dedicated only for this activity. So they fall in the techno regulatory legal realm, so to say, right? So they are technical. They ensure that any conformance to regulations which are applicable are applied, and then the legality is involved, right? We can discuss. In fact, I can show you the document, the contractual document, which is useful to us as a community, because that becomes the basis for most of the cloud adoption contract negotiations which happen. And it's probably a topic, so we can actually take that. That's a good point. I'll take a note of that, and actually probably we can talk separately also on this one.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, so I've kind of spoken about all this largely. Oracle Cloud Network Access, which I spoke about the two-factor authentication and ensured that the system is Oracle owned, on which somebody works. It's a secure laptop. Access is not permitted. There is firewall, etc. There are bastions. So an Oracle employee is validated through a bastion host. No direct access is ever permitted. All network traffic is monitored with SIM logging. All keystrokes are logged. Okay. Uh, Things like even copy paste protocols are disabled, so that no data can leave the production environment. So this is essentially also pointing towards DLP. So there has to be mechanism to ensure that there is no data loss happening via the activities at the administrative side happening in the system. Access, PIM-PAM access, power broker. Now this is where the segregation of duties, which was the question regarding as to who can see what. OCI stands for Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So pointing to this actually helps clarify the point about who can see what in customers' data. And I spoke about, people cannot have multiple assignments of roles for access. Segregation of duties, etc. are there. Database vault is what I spoke about, which is to implement additional security controls on Oracle database. So these security controls restrict access to the application data by privileged database users. So essentially, this is important when we talk of compliance, because the regulator or the auditor may ask who has access to your systems, and that's where we have evidence to prove who has access, who had made access, and on what basis, and what was the action done. Right. So I hope kind of this answers that earlier question. We spoke about location-based access control. So the example that I gave about you could restrict bases a region or a country, etc. Oracle Break Glass is the tool, and if you see, this was the realm wherein there is a escrow account in which it goes, and then the keys get applied. Somebody works. If you see this is where this is the part on Break Glass. Now, it clearly kind of states that Oracle will request approval from the customer, and when the approval is there in Break Glass, then the access is provided. Typically, the durations are in batches of 24 hours, 24, 48, 72, or 96 hours. And this is configurable, and customers have full visibility into what is being done. Usually never happens. There is hardly any need. I've seen examples wherein customers had this service, but they never applied it to the system because of the inherent complexity of managing and securely keeping the keys with themselves and rotating the keys. Now that's a task in itself, which is usually better done by the larger technology providers rather than an individual customer who are more business centric, and they really don't have the wherewithal to invest so much time, effort into just managing the keys. So what if there is a key breach at their end? There's nothing that they can do or we can do, because by the time anything happens, there could be a potential data loss. So customers are not very forthcoming to retain the keys at their end. while it's largely becoming a norm that customers should have that BYOK kind of a capability at their end. Yes, the option exists. Customers applying it, still evolving is what I would say. Okay, so this is a high level overview of the basic cloud security. So any questions? I'll switch to something else now. May I? Okay. So I'll probably take another example of so those interested in kind of reading more on key management, etc. It is again in the public domain, docs.oracle.com, which is about the whole concept of key management. And do you see this section of deleting keys? Is it visible on your screen? Somebody could just confirm.
Yes,
No,
screen
sir,
is
your
not no, no, your
screen is
screen is
not
no
being
longer
shared.
shared.
Sorry, it's not shared. Okay. Please. Here, here the window. Yeah, visible. So this is again a public page. So my intention is to kind of key. So if you see this is the customer managed keys. This is an important topic because any place where customers are leveraging cloud services, they would want to manage the keys or at least have that option and flexibility that any point in time, whenever in the duration of their cloud services, they should be able to kind of take control of the keys, use them, rotate the keys, deprecate the keys, etc., etc. So this is again in the public domain, and please feel free to kind of, I'm putting this on chat so that, okay, pardon me. Where is the, okay, I'll forward it. I'm not too kind of pro on Teams, sorry, a Zoom user, and apologies for that. Okay, the next one is around the area of responsibility between customer and the cloud provider. Now, this is important. We spoke about how security is provided, but then what are the responsibilities? Using cloud services doesn't mean. Are you seeing the screen now, which talks of on-prem full responsibilities and cloud shared responsibilities?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, fine, perfect. So what happens is we saw earlier, largely a model of how security works at a high level. Obviously, each section is a topic in itself, and we could continue to discuss on those in subsequent sessions. But for this one, if you see the responsibility metrics, how it evolves. So in on-prem, obviously, is starting from the infrastructure to the platform to the database to the network to the patches to the application binaries to things around. Defining the virtual machines to power anything and everything which requires to make the IT system operational is customers' responsibility. In some cases, customers do host it from an infrastructure standpoint in a third-party provider's cloud. It could be a hyperscaler or any one of those. But say an AWS, Azure, even Oracle OCI, which is the Oracle's cloud infrastructure equivalent of Azure and AWS. And then there could be others like Tata.com or any other cloud provider, the infrastructure cloud provider, right? While the infrastructure may be theirs, the responsibility of managing the security posture and ensuring that things are moving seamlessly in a compliant manner lies with the customer. And that's where, if you see on the left hand side, everything is kind of managed. That includes areas of backup, high availability, alignment to regulations, administrator access, etc. But when we move to the cloud, it becomes a shared responsibility model. Now, what is it that customers need to own from a SaaS standpoint? Now, this diagram kind of extrapolates that. So on-prem is the left-hand side where everything is managed by the customer. In the SaaS world, if we take the same tiers, which is physical infrastructure, network, virtualization, guest OS, application, etc., all this is managed by the SaaS provider. And customers' responsibilities, however, do not vanish. They still have a responsibility to manage few things. One is users. So all the users, their application users, their admin users for the application. The entire user lifecycle management is customer's responsibility, and data security. When we say data security, it is not about the database, but what goes into the database. The data, they govern and control what goes into the application system, into the application system's database. Because the provider, the SaaS provider, typically does not have any visibility into what data is going inside. They operate at a tier above that. So applying encryption, default encryption of 256-bit, 128 and 256-bit, for example, in case of Oracle SaaS, yes, that's there by default, it will get encrypted. But if they want to apply their own keys, their responsibility. Classify sensitive data, because the cloud provider does not have access to data. They cannot ensure the classification or even identify what is sensitive, what is not sensitive. And that's where, certain fields, for example, the customer may choose to apply masking to their data. Certain fields which are related to PII, they need to be masked. It could be things around, say, in Indian context, maybe Aadhaar number or PAN number or credit card number. I mean, those are, the sensitive PII things, those could be masked. So there are options and technical means and configurations available to kind of mask that data so that, it is not visible. For example, most of the customers would have two systems. One is a production system, one is a test and dev system on which they generally test their configurations. So they may have developers who are actually working on the application from a configuration standpoint, not on building the application. Application is already built by the SaaS provider. Now, when you customize the application or build APIs to connect it to third-party systems, that's where those developers may have visibility. So the test system, whatever data is ported in the test system, that data sensitive field should be masked. That's where, this responsibility comes in. Oversee backups. By default, the backups will be managed by the cloud service provider. What customer needs to do is ensure that, yes, it is in alignment with the requirements that they have. For example, a regulatory requirement of Ministry of Company Affairs. It says daily backups to be taken. So there has to be a mechanism by which customers should be able to kind of, ask the provider, say, what is your frequency of backups? Okay. What is the RTO, RPO in case of a disaster? Those are areas which should be governed, contractually agreed, and be, the customer should be on top of. This is the responsibility of the customer, and rest all, which includes disaster recovery, defense in depth, security validation, infrastructure security, basic, all the other application security, including vulnerabilities, updation of software, etc., is responsibility of the SaaS provider. Any questions on this? Because
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
I wanted to ask about the masking. Like, can we also have the role-based masking?
Role-based masking. Okay, so there is instead of role-based masking, it is role-based access control. Okay, so as a role, you could define which columns. For example, there could be There's a table. I'm talking from a database construct now. So a database has tables. Table
No,
has
that I
columns.
understood. That I understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
have another question basically. So, can we also mask, for example, Aadhaar card? Right? Can we mask the first 8 digits, right? Not the last four, so that one can tell you like what the Aadhaar card is valid or not.
so
Like
that would
from the
be
like
part of, yeah.
call
Okay.
center support standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The agent
So
need to know, like validate the customer's identity before resolving their query, but they should not get exposed to the entire data
yeah,
set.
yeah. So that is exactly what the masking. Now masking can be done in two ways. One is you kind of directly apply through the inbuilt features, and let's kind of keep it technology agnostic. So masking as a capability is largely a industry pattern, right? So yes, it can be done. I mean, the short answer is yes, it can be done. Various ways to do it. One is the inherent data masking capabilities which come as a feature within various providers. Oracle also has a data masking feature, right? So that's one. Second is you could apply certain rules to kind of obfuscate at a database tier itself. So one is at the application, second is at the database tier itself. So obfuscation could be done to kind of mask fields, and that's why the implementation. So you could kind of customize your implementation to do that. So at database tier, the capabilities are available because let's forget the SaaS systems for now. But if you have a database system wherein certain queries are done and you have a front end system which is querying that, there are capabilities within. I mean, I'm familiar with Oracle database, so I can say yes. Obfuscation capabilities exist within the database to kind of clearly obfuscate that part, and you can choose which fields you want to. So there are
Okay.
procedures and capabilities
But will
available.
it be, will it be role based or will it be like for all?
No, so you that's where again so yes, you can. Good question actually. Yes, you could apply role based. So what you do is you do it two tiered now. Now you're getting into the complexity of application. So you could have roles which would say first level, who has access to this. An agent may not. For example, I know when I call up for my say credit card or some query, some of the agents have a very partial view, and if you delve deeper and ask for more, then they say, okay, I'll talk to my manager and get back. Manager has probably second level of access, which would be more detailed, and they will have access to more fields. So role based, yes, and within those roles, whatever access comes, though that gets applied on the database tier at the table level or the column level. You may have to talk to your your DBAs to kind of do that. But yes, technically a very good possibility of kind of doing this. I will not rule out the complexity of doing that though.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, and I missed your name. Good, great question. So.
Yeah, I'm Rahul Kokcha.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm still not. Yes. Yeah. Rahul. So it's very much possible, but yes, needs effort because there is customization out of box. This capability uh, will not be easy because each customer may have a different set of requirements, and when it comes to SaaS, there is a high degree of standardization. So you kind of may not be the most ideal model for SaaS. This will be great if you use a PaaS service, which would be platform as a service with database and an application hosted on top of that, and then kind of do this customization. Out of box SaaS, uh, slightly difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And you reminded me of something which I did 15 years ago. So I'm still recalling my old thoughts. Okay, so compliance to various things, which includes PCI, HIPAA, etc. Now these are two prominent compliance regulations which come into play. So if you're referring to anything which is alluding to any payment gateway, etc., then obviously PCI has to be considered, and then of course anybody who's in the healthcare industry has to abide by the HIPAA norms. So there are programs, there are capabilities which can ensure conformance to this. So same application, would have a wrapper to ensure compliance to this, and likewise compliance to say HIPAA. Because PCI would mandate annual audits and will go into a specific PCI approved pod within the data center, etc. So those are kind of things which need to be considered. Uh, yeah. Okay. I'll quickly. So there are a few other things which I think everyone should kind of keep in mind, which is about SOC 2 and CIQ. So CIQ is important because, and then trust center. Almost every cloud service provider has come up with their trust centers. This is the repository of largely all the external facing contractual documents, the SLAs, the conformance to compliance, the ready questionnaires available around, say, like for example, CIQ or SIG. Some of the SOC ones are largely in the external domain. SOC 2 usually remains in the internal domain, and you need a permission or an NDA to view that. But and also sometimes cloud service providers push certain things. For example, federal government in US, how many requests came for information sharing by the federal authorities or the government authorities. Though that kind of data is also sometimes published by certain service providers. I know, a couple of large ones, we publish it because, that also shows how many times was a customer data requested by a law enforcement agency. By the way, the standard protocol is that if a law enforcement agency requests data, in case of Oracle, if you see Oracle's documentation in the public domain, we will refer that request back to the customer. We will not share that data directly. Okay. And in case the law says that we cannot inform the customer if the request is made by the law enforcement authority, in that case, obviously, the law will prevail. So there is a whole section on that too, because of late, for various reasons, cross-border information exchange and certain crimes, etc. Law enforcement agencies from the country and even outside sometimes request for data. Right. So this part done, I will stop sharing now. Now there was a point about how do we looking at AI. Now the next thing is about we have AI, and how do we ensure that the AI part is well leveraged in cloud services. So I'll just give a quick sneak peek. I think we are just will run out of time otherwise, but I'll share a slide and probably. Okay, so I've spoken about this. I've spoken about the transfer of responsibilities. The concept of zero trust model and defense in depth. I think that's important in cloud services, and that is how the blueprint for security should be done. Of course, on the zero trust side, obviously trust no one, verify everyone, which includes human and non-human requests. It could be from machine, API, whatever, devices, etc. And then, of course, depends in depth is largely like peeling the onion with multi-tiered, defense postures which can be applied to the solution. So policies through applications, physical data, perimeter security at the host level, etc. Right. So all those tiers, one tier over the other, ensure that even if one is breached, still, there is no material loss or to the system or to the data. Uh, we spoke about this, which was about the OCNA, etc. And now this slide is kind of good because it talks of data security and business continuity. Now when say for example a disaster strikes, the usual focus is on focusing on bringing the system up, but that is also the time when data potentially could be compromised, and that's where strict data handling practices should be put in place. Plus there should be very strong arrangements in terms of back-to-back security, conformance and alignment with third parties and any suppliers who are hypothetically could be an infrastructure provider, could be a telco, could be any other vendor who's actually working as a supplier or a sub-processor for the cloud service provider. So yeah, and now this is very, very high level, but then AI is kind of, all of us agree, AI is kind of changing the threat landscape. And 2 years ago, we hardly spoke about AI, and now AI has become the norm in almost every conversation that we have around technology. So all these are new threat areas which have emerged, which, the systems as people process technology, all of us should be, aware and be prepared to counter. So about data leakage, um, competitive threats, data integrity, adaptive malware, malware which kind of changes its shape and form and morphs depending on the posture on the other end. So this is, and this, all these capabilities are essentially, so on one side AI itself becomes a threat vector, and on the other side how do we control it? So why not use AI to control the AI threat? So that's where something, this is something which is what we do, which is about everything that we do would be would have uh, the leverage of AI to control the threats. So while this whole model of zero trust and defense in depth continues, and incident detection, remediation, analysis, and prevention, that cycle goes on, and then of course that whole circle of govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. All this happens. AI comes into play, and these controls are applied. Now, while all this happens, given that we saw AI as a threat also. So in Oracle systems, AI is used, but two key points to note. One is there are guardrails to ensure that, the AI tools do what they are supposed to do. That's one. Second is, how are the models trained? Models are not trained using customer data. So that's very important in a cloud services, because customers' data is customers' data, and that data should not be touched for training any models. Right. So that is the kind of assurance every customer would need when they are using cloud services or third-party hosted services, which also have a AI play. Right. So maybe subsequently we may kind of get deeper into the AI play, and how does it actually play, what are the threats, and what are the security postures which can be taken in tandem with the AI to have a unified secure model. So any questions before I kind of wrap it up? I think we are kind of
Hi,
split time.
Pradyumn. I have a question on the last slide and just wanted to understand, is there any um, AI framework that you look at from a security and privacy perspective, or how do you go about that as a practice?
So when you say AI framework, could you please elaborate? I mean, are you
So
talking
for
of the LLMs, or you're talking of the overall?
a lot of times I find that a lot of softwares today come with
Mhm.
an AI module whenever the updates happen,
Okay.
and everyone is trying to put a certain AI functionality into the system.
Yeah.
Now, when you're evaluating vendors, it gets little difficult to understand, specifically if you're in a regulated sector,
Okay.
how to evaluate if this is okay or not. Because there is an EU AI Act on one side, and then there is something like an OWASP ML top 10 on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you really, but these are very different, right? Is there some unified way of looking at it as a structure?
Uh, okay. So I'll try and answer. I mean, the question is like kind of is vast because it's like, there are so many touch points to it.
Yes.
But number one is, I think, does AI, so even before that, I think what you're referring to are the agents, AI agents, which are infused as capabilities within the product. Is
Yes.
that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I think that's kind of a capability, but you always have that option of not enabling those agents, right?
Yes.
So you could choose to. Now, why would you not enable is when A, if you don't have a business purpose or a need, B, you believe that they could be intrusive or compromise the security posture and maybe insert a threat vector into your operations.
Yes.
Right. Now, so I think the due diligence that needs to be done, and that was Kunal, right? I hope.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks. So Kunal, I think it's important to assess, and that's where due diligence is very important because you need to assess in terms of are there enough guardrails so that the AI agent actually is doing what it is supposed to do as its chartered scope. Not an easy task. I'll never say that. Sorry, and I have not been on the other side of the table. Okay. So I really am not in a good position to comment, but your question is very pertinent. Now, what happens is it's like, like the models, they train themselves. We also need to train ourselves to train the models and control the models. And that's where A, the technical know-how, B, the assurances, including contractual guarantees and other things from the providers, C, the regulatory part. What does the regulation permit? Right. And if you have, because EU AI Act is one, there is something in India which has come, there's authority which is set up and all that stuff, right, which is happening. And I think, so I'll request our lead, Mr. Paramveer, to, kind of also see, if the AI authority, someday, we could discuss on that too later, because that's a very interesting area. But guardrail is one. Second is the models, because ultimately the agents will leverage the models. The models should not be trained or used using your data. Right? It's important because today you are with a service provider. Tomorrow you may choose to move away from that service provider. Right? IP is yours, data is yours. You are the data controller. So it's not just about the agent. It's about the way the agent works, the guardrails, the compliances, and then of course, assurances through third-party attestations, which could be like SOC 2. I think slowly, I would not be surprised if I see more and more of, AI-related governance queries and checks becoming integral part of SOC 2.
Yes.
Right. And that's where the auditors, and I hope, those who are in the audit domain, they're already working on it. I'm sure at a furious pace. So that's one. But I mean, these are things which I can think of, but then every day I find something new in the AI field, honestly. So sorry, I mean, if I didn't answer your question correctly,
No,
but
it gave me a lot of touch points to look at, go back and relook at as a.
yeah, I mean, you should have assurances. One is it doesn't work. The models don't use your data. B, guardrails are in place for everything. There is assurance, there is technical know-how, and there are constant updations in terms of the model usage, etc., LLMs, etc., whatever they're using, whichever is your technology provider. And then, of course, compliance to the upcoming and enforced regulations both. I mean, these could be certain things you could look at, and then of course we are all learning as a community
Yes.
here. So with that, I think I come to the end of my presentation, and sorry, Paramveer, I exceeded by 3 minutes. Apologies. I'm open for any questions for another few minutes if our admin permits.
No, no. If the requirement is there, definitely we are taking time to learn now. So why
Yeah.
not?
So
Any questions, team? Dear respected members.
as we have our groups and all, we can definitely continue our chat and conversations on that too.
Okay. So let me stop recording now. I think this session is over. For let me stop recording for this, and